How's it going, folks? So we are back here today, and we're doing a little screen recording action, and we're going to discuss some of the sketching tools, So we're in here on our practice document that we created. Of course, to do that, we went to the Onshape menu, we selected Create, and we selected Document, and then we typed in the name Practice and hit OK. So if you already have the document, go ahead and open it up. And once again, we're brought back in to our front, top, and right plane. We talked about how we were going to start our first sketch number 1, on the top plane. So in order to do that, go ahead and click top and click sketch. You'll see we're brought into our sketch plane, and our sketch plane is sitting directly over top of the plane in which we selected, which is the top plane in this case. Now, I also talked about how I like to hide these planes while I'm in the sketch in order to, make it a little bit easier on myself. The other thing I like to do is right-click and select View Normal to Sketch Plane. This is going to flip everything around. Let me scoot that. This is going to flip everything around, so we're getting a good bird's eye kind of view on it, looking directly at it. All right, so let's talk about these sketching tools a little bit. We are very familiar with this undo and redo button from Tinkercad and working through that. And I want to mention that these are super helpful if you're talking to me and you get to a point where you don't know how you got there and you're confused and you're lost. Honestly, it's going to be difficult for me to help you. So I just tell students, hit that undo button until you get to a point that you're familiar with. And then from there, I can help you move forward. So this undo redo button is really helpful. We're not going to discuss the extrude and the revolve quite yet, as those more closely relate to the feature tools or the model tools as opposed to the sketching tools. The next one we'll talk about is line. So you can see line right here with the shortcut L. And there's a few different ways to make a line. However, in order to operate the line tool, you are going to left click and release on line. And you see that your cursor now has crosshairs. Once again, I'm back to a cursor. Click it. Now it's a crosshair. And you can see that the line tool is now highlighted, which is kind of nice. So we'll move on over. I left my origin, as I like to use that as a reference point, and I will left click and release, and you can see I can pull a line out, and in this case it snaps horizontally and vertically, which is nice due to my constraints. But I'll go over and I will click, left click again, and you will see that another line can come out. So this is kind of a line link where I can continue to create these lines however I so please. The other thing I want to mention is as soon as you are done making a line, so let's say I make this line right here and I begin to create this one, I can still edit the length of this previous line. So let's say I want it to be 5 inches, hit enter, and now we have this line right here with a length of exactly 5 inches. Once again, left click and release. I want this to be 3, type in 3, hit enter, and you can see my line has changed to 3 inches. Go ahead and complete this box, and you can see it's shaded as it is now a closed shape. The other way to make a line is by left clicking and holding and dragging out to whatever length you like and releasing. Now this is only going to create a singular line, not a line chain, but they both have value in different situations. Go ahead and click and release, and then in this case, I'll just make this one 4 inches so you can see how this all works. We talked about how to delete stuff. Once again, the back arrow is one way in order to do that. Back arrow is one way in order to do that. Another way to do that is simply by left clicking and hitting delete on your keyboard. Once again, left clicking and hitting delete. I can also hold down my shift key and delete multiple lines at once if I want to select a few lines. Release from your shift key and then hit delete. You'll delete multiple lines. If I want to get rid of everything or the majority of things on my work plane here or sketch plane, I can go ahead and left click and drag this nice little frame out. Release, you see everything is now highlighted. And then once again, I can hit delete and it's all gone. Great, so that's my line tool. Make sure you're messing around with that line tool. The next thing we're going to talk about is the rectangle. Now, this one is the first one with one of these drop-down menus. You'll notice that I have both a corner rectangle and a center point rectangle. So the corner rectangle, it does exactly what it says. It's referenced off of two corners. So you can see the top corner I placed at the origin. The bottom corner I'll place over here. Whenever I click, I once again have the option to change the size. So in this case, I'll make a 4 enter 3 enter box. So a 4x3 rectangle is what I got right here. There is also a center point rectangle. So this center point rectangle can be helpful, once again, if you're referencing off of something like an origin where you need to make a box that is, let's say, 2 by 2, kind of right in the center there. So not saying you'll use this center point rectangle all the time, but it definitely can be useful. So there's the rectangle tools and the line tools. The next one we'll talk about, let me go ahead and do a quick delete, is the circles. So for our circles, we have a center point circle, a 3-point circle, and the ellipse. We're probably not going to use the ellipse, maybe won't use the 3-point circle, but we'll definitely use the center point circle. Oops, I didn't click on the center point. So once again, I'm referencing off of my origin, clicking directly on that constraint there, and I can drag this out from the center point. I'll click. Just like the rectangles and the lines, once I click, I can type in a specific value, and you can see now that it is at 2-inch diameter. When I am done using a tool, I'm not sure if this was mentioned, when you are done using a tool, hit the escape key on your keyboard and it will exit you out of that specific tool, or you can right click and hit escape circle or whatever tool you're in, and it will do the same thing. The other circle I have is a 3-point circle. This one's a little bit different as it's referenced by 3 separate points. It makes it hard to do this with precision, but for some applications, this might be helpful. So that's the 3-point circle. The last one is ellipse. So for the ellipse, you are going to place it and you are going to reference this distance, and then you are going to reference this distance. So you're kind of referencing the length and the width of your ellipse in this case. And then you can change it to 4, enter, 2, enter, and there's our ellipse right there. Wonderful. Escape out of that tool, highlight everything, and go ahead and hit delete. Next tool we're going to talk about is the arc tool. So this arc tool has quite a few different options. The one we're most likely to use is our 3-point arc. So we'll discuss that one. For our 3-point arc, the name says exactly that. In fact, I'll use my origin as my center point or my second point. So for the 3-point arc, I'll go from here and I'll go over to here. And then our next point is where we want this curve to be. So in this case, I'll place it upon the origin, and now I have my 3-point arc. So this can be helpful for, sweeping curves and other stuff like that. There's also center point arc, and there's also tangent arc. I guess I can show you the center point arc. So that's that right there, the center point arc. In this case, you select a center point to base it off of. You go to the radius that you would like it to be, and then you select your start point and your stop point. I kind of like the way that looks. That's fun to play with. We're not really going to be using a tangent arc, but a tangent arc has to happen off of an existing line. You cannot make a tangent arc on a blank sketch. And what that's doing is it's using a tangent constraint in order to kind of place that arc directly on the edge of that line that you're making. So those are the arcs. We're not really going to talk about the conic arc as it's a little bit more complicated to explain, but basically it's referencing off of a point somewhere far outside. Okay. The next thing we'll talk about is polygons. And we have two different kinds of polygons in this case. We have an inscribed polygon and we have a circumscribed polygon. The difference between these is how they reference in relation to a circle placed around them, in that the circumscribed, the outside points of your polygon are inside of the circle, and with the inscribed, the inside edges of your polygon are on the outside edge of the circle. So they do differ slightly. We'll talk about an inscribed one. In fact, let me go ahead and delete my screen real quick. For the inscribed, I'll just base it off of my origin. We'll place it out at whatever size we so feel. The next thing I'll reference is how to change the sides on your polygon. All you need to do is slide in or out on your screen. Inside the circle, it's going to make less sides on your polygon, and as you move it to the outside, you will raise the side count of that polygon. So let's say we want it a 9-side polygon. There you go. And then the difference is, so you can see this is the inscribed one. You can see that the outside edge of the circle is aligned with the inside edge of the polygon. And with the circumscribed one, you can see that the outside edge of the polygon is on the inside edge of that circle there. So they do have some differences. Escape out of that tool, highlight, hit delete, and we're on to our next tool. Next tool we'll talk about is the Spline tool. The Spline tool is really good for complex curves and stuff that you can't really do with some of these other tools. However, it's hard to provide specific dimensions on these spline tools. So that's the one thing I will reference. Referencing my origin again, and let's just drag it out, and I'll go horizontally at first and we'll place it there. You can see it's asking for my next point, and what it wants us to do is just move it at any point, and this previous curve is going to follow along with that. So as I mentioned, it's not necessarily great for precise designing, but if you're doing something that needs to be super ergonomic or have human curves or whatever it may be, then this is really helpful for that, the spline tool. And you can, once you've placed your spline here, once you've actually placed your spline, you can go through and edit these points and kind of move them around. So if you don't want it to be right here, you want to adjust it up a little bit. You want this one to go down a little bit, just to kind of really get that perfect shape if you're trying to create something that's, that it has a specific aesthetic or is for the human body. All right, that is our spline tool. The next one we'll talk about is point. So for point, let me create a line first. Points can be placed in the middle of nowhere, right? I can place a point right there, point right there, point right there. But I can also place a point on the midpoint of this line. I could also place a midpoint or a point, at a certain point on this rectangle here, there, or even, throw one in the corner. So these points can be helpful reference points, but they can also be used in conjunction with the whole tool, which we'll talk about when we get to the modeling tools. So that's our point tool. It's straightforward, but it is useful at times. The next tool we'll talk about is our text tool. The text tool. So for the text tool, this is all referenced by the size of the text box. So you're going to want to adjust it to the size that you need it to be, and we'll click right there. Let's say Mr. B. So I can place Mr. B. You can also go through and you can adjust the font as well. Mess around a little bit, find something that you're that works for you. And then go ahead and hit OK. You'll see it places out that Mr. B. If you need to adjust it, you can still adjust it based off of these, and it will simply adjust everything accordingly. And if you need to edit it, you can just go ahead and oops. Well, editing, it's not as easy as I thought. But nonetheless, you can just go back in and create another one. That's not a big deal. All right. So we are going to go ahead and delete the text. I use text sometimes if I'm personalizing work for, a family member or something of the sort. And we are slowly getting to the end here. We are slowly working through. So the next thing we'll talk about is a sketch fillet. Let me start by I'll just make like a 2x2 box. And the sketch fillet right here, this is going to add a curve onto a certain edge on your sketch. Now you can do this exact same fillet once you turn your model into 3-dimensional, but some people, for whatever reason, some people do prefer to create their curves prior to extruding their object. So let's say I want this curve to be, I don't know, let's make it big. Let's make it a 1-inch radius. So now you can see that corner is curved. And if I click on this corner, it will automatically make that 1-inch radius. I can also go through and I can edit it. So I want this one to be 0.5. And it will subsequently adjust your other ones. But you can also go through and adjust it so that just a single one is different, like this one right here. And then you can go back through, double click, change that to 1, and now that one is slightly different than the rest of yours. This one's at a 1-inch radius, the rest of them are at a 0.5. Once again, this tool can be used once you are completely done with your model and you extrude it. You can do it after it's extruded, which is an option as well. Next thing is your trim tool and your extend tool and your split tool. The trim tool is super helpful. Let's say that you accidentally created a line that goes too far and you want to take this line back. And you want to take this line back to be right there. So all I need to do is select my trim tool and I can click and click until I get it right back to where it needs to be. So you can see that I trim that line back to be right there. We can also use this trim tool. Let's say for whatever reason I need to get rid of this radius. I should be able to use the trim tool to remove that radius and then do whatever I need to do based off of that. Let's say I need to make this back into a perfect square. I can simply use my extend tool now. And if I click on the end here, it will extend it, and I can extend it however far I need to. And same thing here, I can click and extend it right to the edge. So now I've taken that radius and returned it back to a nice perfect square using just my trim and my extend tool. Both of these are really helpful. I use them a lot. Next tool we'll talk about is the offset tool. So if I click the offset tool, I have options. So I can either left click and drag out and hold and drag out a singular item from this object. So let's say I just want to drag that out and make it 1, whatever, yeah. Or the other option is to click and release. The other option is to highlight everything. Highlight everything. By shift clicking. Or by creating a box around it. Then if I click, I should be able to size this entire thing up however I so please. So let's say I need to create a wall that is 0.54 around that original object. You can see I was able to do that. So that is my offset tool. Once again, I can do it as a singular. I can do it as a, well, it's not working, as a singular object, but I can do it as a singular object, but I can also do it as an entire feature as well. Most of the time, you'll probably be referencing this out as one large feature. Offset tools are great if you're creating something like, I don't know, like coasters or keychains or stuff like that. You need to make repeated versions of something. There we go. We have just a couple more tools left, the mirror tool and the array or pattern tool, as well as your dimension tool. I'll talk about the dimension tool real quick. You're just going to click exactly what it is you would like to dimension and then place your dimension in. So if you're trying to figure out, oh wait, how long did I make this side here? I can kind of click both sides, drag it out, and you see that I made it at 2 inches. Now I should be able to subsequently adjust it after I place a dimension. So if I need to adjust the length of this line, I can simply click it and I can adjust the length of this line. Well, it's not going to work with this here. But I can adjust the length of this line to 1.5. All right, that is all that we have time for. I got to get going here. So hopefully you have a better understanding of these tools in the sketching plane. And tomorrow we will discuss the model tools. Till next time.